Lord, that we get your message out to this world because it's in dire need of your Spirit. And Father God, we just thank you. And right now that we're going into some worship, we open our hearts, we open our minds to receive the Holy Spirit tonight. And if we're here with trials and struggles, that tonight we lay it at your feet, Lord. And we just thank you for everything you have given to us and what you're going to do tonight. And in the name of Jesus, we say, amen.
Let's praise God for a little bit, amen. Vamos a adorar al Señor por un momento. Le invito que cierre sus ojos, levante tus manos por un momento al Señor. Vuelvo en tu presencia. Solo quiero estar ante tus pies. Envuelvo este momento santo y no me quiero ir. No busco bendiciones. Cristo, no me debes nada a mí, más de lo que tú quieras hacer. Te quiero a ti. Lo siento por andar mis sentimientos, lo siento por cantar sin adorar. Llévame hasta el inicio, abro mi corazón a ti, a ti. Me envuelvo en tu presencia. Solo quiero estar ante tus pies. Envuelvo este momento santo y no me quiero ir, no me quiero ir. No busco bendiciones. Cristo, no me debes nada a mí, más de lo que tú haces. Te quiero a ti, te quiero a ti. Levanta tu voz, lo siento.
I'm going to try to do both English and Spanish. Maybe I'll do Spanish more than English, maybe English more than Spanish. I'm going to try to do both. So we have a series that's been going on. I'm just going to introduce it again because we do have visitors today. So tenemos como una serie de estos días que hemos estado teniendo clases. Está basado en, se llama Mi Testimonio. Y este es, cada uno de los líderes hemos sido asignados cada martes para dar nuestro testimonio, para compartir, ¿verdad?, lo que Dios ha hecho en nuestras vidas, porque a veces nos vemos, salimos, entramos y nos saludamos, pero la verdad no conocemos un poquito más allá, y por eso hicimos estas series de estos martes. Creo que son los últimos 8 martes que vamos a estar haciendo cada quien dando nuestro testimonio. So, ahora me tocó a mí y voy a empezar con un versículo que es Josué 1:9, que dice: mira que te mando y te esfuerces y seas valiente, no temas ni desmayes, porque Jehová tu Dios estará contigo donde quiera que tú vayas. Ese versículo lo escogí para empezar porque tiene un gran significado para mi vida. Ese versículo en tiempos de angustia, en tiempos de desesperación, ha sido uno de los versículos que me ha ayudado a salir adelante, a poder confiar en Dios. Y concerniente a los testimonios, estamos diciendo que es un testimonio, pues el testimonio es básicamente compartiendo lo que Dios ha hecho en nuestra vida y puede ser de bendición para alguien más. Y ayer estábamos hablando con una prima mía, con unos primos míos, y ellos nos estaban compartiendo a nosotros, a mí y a Isaí, el testimonio de ellos. Y es un testimonio bien poderoso que I would love for them to share it sometime. Pero es un testimonio muy grande y un testimonio bien poderoso que pasó con mi prima, y yo lo había escuchado, ¿verdad?, cuando estaba más pequeña, not too small, but it was years ago. And yo le dije, hey, cuéntanos lo que pasó, cuéntanos su testimonio y así. Y ya nos empezó a contar todo lo que ella había pasado en un tiempo. Y a mí me tocó mucho su testimonio porque es un testimonio muy poderoso y un testimonio que ha impactado a bastante gente, la verdad, y nos impactó ayer. Y para mí fue de mucha bendición ella y su esposo, el testimonio que nos dieron, y me puse a pensar y dije, we're sharing these couple weeks, hemos estado compartiendo nuestros testimonios, and that's the point, que sean un impacto, que sean de bendición para alguien más. Y cuando terminamos y que ella ya terminó el testimonio, terminó dándonos palabra a nosotros diciendo: no están solos, ustedes sigan adelante, Dios está con ustedes. Y ese es el punto de dar el testimonio, de animar a la gente, de animar a los que están en un momento de desesperación, en un momento de angustia. Y yo le doy gracias a Dios porque pues ayer la verdad que fuimos muy bendecidos por parte de ellos. La verdad nada más fuimos to go visit y it wasn't planned, it just happened. But that is the beauty of a testimony. Eso es lo bonito de un testimonio, que a veces sale en cualquier momento, poder compartir con alguien: hey, Dios está haciendo esto, Dios hizo esto en mi vida, y puede ser de bendición para alguien más. So, back to me. Me llamo Eunice Flores. Yo nací también como Elmer y Jaciel, fueron los últimos que dieron el testimonio las semanas pasadas. También como ellos, yo nací en un hogar cristiano. Mis papás eran copastores de una iglesia. Pues yo estoy muy acostumbrada a la vida de la iglesia, a estar en los servicios desde las really early in the morning, de que íbamos a prender los aires de acondicionador para que estuviera fresca la iglesia. O sea, yo me acuerdo de todo eso. Y así era nuestra vida, de que siempre estábamos en la iglesia para eventos especiales. It was always church. Our lives revolved around church. And I want to say my parents were very strict, especially my dad. Mis padres eran muy estrictos, especialmente mi papá. Me recuerdo de que siendo desde niña que nos ponía pues a orar, ponía hasta días de ayuno como los sábados. Casi siempre los sábados es para dormir cuando estamos chiquitos, porque no vamos a la escuela. Pero me acuerdo que mi papá nos ponía a ayunar los sábados, nos despertaba temprano, nos ponía en la sala, nos hincábamos y en el sofá teníamos que orar. Yo digo que teníamos que orar porque a veces nos quedábamos dormidos y no orábamos, la verdad, estábamos muy chiquitos. Pero así crecí yo, y esos son lo que yo me acuerdo de mi papá y cómo nosotros crecimos. Crecimos en la iglesia, crecimos así. Años pasaron, y pues siempre uno de pequeño nunca se imagina las cosas que van a pasar ni a suceder, pero me recuerdo que después de, como ya cuando estaba como unos 7 o 8 añitos, yo me acuerdo que pues a mi papá le habían diagnosticado el cáncer. A él parece que se lo habían diagnosticado a los 26 años de edad, so he was really young. He was 26 when they diagnosed my dad with cancer. But by the time I was around, he was like in his 30s, so he was like 30, like I would say like 34, 35, and he was struggling with that. Y en todo ese proceso y en todo ese tiempo yo me acuerdo pues dándole sus medicamentos, me acuerdo cómo la enfermedad del cáncer iba avanzando en su cuerpo, me acuerdo los momentos de panic que mi mamá a veces también le daban al ver la condición en la que estaba mi papá. Y son momentos que nos marcan en nuestro corazón desde pues niños, no se nos olvidan esos momentos. Yo me acuerdo pues darle también el medicamento a mi papá, y siempre también lo que más me acuerdo o que más me impacta es de que él seguía predicando, él seguía él seguía al tanto de la iglesia, seguía siempre buscando de Dios. Yo lo miraba siempre orando, se encerraba en un cuarto y él decía, no me moleste, voy a orar, and he would just be in there for hours just praying. Y me acuerdo pues todo eso desde pequeña, porque le digo, así crecimos, fue nuestra vida de cristianos y de servir a Dios. Pero pues desafortunadamente sí llegó la enfermedad del cáncer a la vida de él. Como fue pasando el tiempo, el cáncer fue avanzando también en el cuerpo de mi papá, y me acuerdo que en los últimos meses ya eran como los últimos meses del año, como en octubre, noviembre. Y me acuerdo que esos meses fueron muy difíciles para nosotros porque se venían los holidays, se venían que Christmas, Thanksgiving, New Year's, and those are happy holidays, and thankful moment where it's like Thanksgiving and stuff like that. Pero para nosotros, or in my life, in the situations that we were going through, it was just very hard to celebrate, especially that 1 year. It was 2002. By then, I was 10 years old. I have an older brother, he's here, and I have a younger sister. We're 4 years apart. But that, like I said, that was in 2002, and I was 10. En el 2002, me acuerdo que a finales de ese año fue cuando la condición de mi mamá really got bad. And I remember him just being in and out of the hospital. Me acuerdo que siempre estaba entrando y saliendo del hospital, Mi mamá ya había pues dejado de trabajar por lo mismo de que para atenderlo a él. Y pues también los biles se acumularon. No me acuerdo así bien cosas porque estaba muy pequeña para en verdad entender en los momentos, pero yo me acuerdo ver a mi mamá angustiada, preocupada, viendo los biles. Me acuerdo que una vez llegó un señor a la casa y venían en verdad a quitarnos la troca porque decían que ya tenían como 4 meses de que no se pagaba la troca, pero porque pues mi mamá no tenía trabajo, my dad was in the hospital. Y Me acuerdo ese día que sí, había llegado un señor, tocó la puerta y nos dijo, hey, vengo a recoger la troca, ya, o sea, ya le hemos dado tanto tiempo, y le estaban diciendo a mi mamá. Y la verdad ni para comer teníamos. So, me acuerdo que my mom had opened a can of beans, just a can of beans. Le había puesto en un sartén para que se calentaran, y nada más nos lo iba a hacer así rapidito y ella se iba a regresar al hospital. Y en lo que se estaba cocinando, o sea, estaba calentando los frijoles, llega el señor empieza a decir todo eso a mi mamá, y pues mi mamá se desespera y empieza a llorar con el señor y le dice, mi esposo está en el hospital, yo no tengo trabajo, y pues explicándole verdad la situación al señor. Y el señor pues también, I mean, it's his job, también no es de que él quiera quitarnos la droga o quitarnos nada, sino de que es su trabajo. Y me acuerdo que mi mamá, el señor se metió a la casa, le dijo, can I go in? Y él se metió, y pues I was little, but I was so nosy, so I would always just like trying to see who's there, what are they talking about. So I remember, kind of peeking in and trying to see what they were talking about. So that's why I remember the conversation real clearly. And so they sat down, they talked in the living room, and I remember him telling my mom, okay, we're going to see how we can work with you, we're going to see how we can, do this. And me acuerdo que el señor se fue, nada más lo único que le dijo a mi mamá fue, ok, vamos a ver la manera de cómo ayudarle, pero la verdad, ya son bastantes meses, tal vez no le pueda ayudar. El señor, me acuerdo que se fue, y así quedó, se fue el señor, y en lo que se fue el señor, los frijoles se quemaron. So mi mamá empezó a llorar más porque dijo, that was all I had for my kids, and I was about to head to the hospital, and now the beans are burned, I don't even have money. Y yo me acuerdo que mamá just started crying and crying, y pues as a little kid, it moves you because, that's your mom, and that's your parents, and, And I remember a few minutes after that, despuesito, unos minutos después, vino, o alguien tocó la puerta de la casa, y era el mismo señor, y decía, le dijo a mi mamá, can your kids help? Que si tus niños le podían ayudar. Y me acuerdo que quería nuestra ayuda porque él había comprado bastante mandado, y tenía el carro lleno de mandado, y quería que nosotros ayudáramos a traer el mandado que él nos había comprado. Y pues my mom was a mess those days, so I remember she started crying again, and she was just bawling, and y dijo, y no se preocupe de los pagos de la troca. Le dice, no se preocupe, nosotros lo vamos a arreglar, no los va a tener que pagar los que están, era como 4 meses, y le dijo, no los va a tener que pagar. And it was just God, God moviéndose de una manera y otra para poder bendecirnos a nosotros, porque la verdad fueron momentos muy difíciles cuando, no había income, no estaban trabajando mis padres, nosotros estábamos chiquitos, como, like I said, I was like 9 or 10 at that time. And it was just a tough time. And I'm going to say very quickly because, I know time and it's just a long testimony. Pero esos son los recuerdos que yo tengo de mi niñez, de que como Dios, de una manera u otra, siempre Él proveía, siempre Él estaba ahí para nosotros, y de muchas maneras más, de que mi mamá vio también las bendiciones y la provisión de Dios en esos momentos. Y pues como niños, nosotros estamos atentos y nosotros estamos viendo, y cuando sus papás te dicen God is real, you understand that and you know that. And when they say, hey, look, God just provided this for us, you keep that in your heart, and you know that God is real. And so that was me growing up, and but that's what I seen as I was growing up, just how God's provision was always with my family, and I thank God for that. Pero sí, prosiguió el tiempo, y como les decía, en el 2002 fue cuando sí empeoró la situación con mi papá, y y los últimos meses fue cuando empeoró, y me acuerdo que ya los últimos meses, no sé si fue noviembre o diciembre, le habían dicho pues que ya lo iban a desahuciar. They were going to send him to a hospice, that there was no remedy, there was no cure. He was doing really bad. He was already like stage 4 leukemia, and there was no, nothing. At that time, by that point, my dad was losing his hair. He was real skinny. His legs were swelling up really bad. He was getting a lot of blood clots, just really bad. So the situation was getting, bad and out of control. Pero mi papá, algo que siempre, cuando le preguntaban, hermano Rubén, ¿cómo estás? Y él siempre decía, bendecido. Y eso me acuerdo también porque, man, like, estaba bien mal, like, he was really sick. O sea, a veces hay momentos que dices, okay, está bien que se queje esta persona porque they really have it going bad, pero él nunca se quejó. Y era lo que para mí como hija me impactó, de que él siempre decía que decía bendecido y en victoria. Y aunque se mirara como se mirara, pasó el tiempo y ya lo desahuciaron, lo mandaron para la casa. Cuando lo mandaron para la casa ya fue como en diciembre. Y pues sí, era Christmas time, and it was like New Year's time, and I remember que para ese Christmas, my mom told us, go, que habían unos hermanos que nos habían invitado a su casa, y me decían, pues váyanse con ellos porque we really weren't going to do anything at home because my dad was really bad. And so we were like, okay, as kids you don't really know, so you're like, okay, let me go have fun somewhere else. So we left, and I remember we were out with the other family, but in the back of your mind you're like, my parents are at home, and you know what's going on. So I remember all of that. For New Year's, I also remember que en Año Nuevo fue cuando estábamos en la iglesia, nos habíamos ido a la iglesia. A lot of our family from Monterrey was here at that time because the situation was getting really bad. Y nos habíamos ido para la iglesia para celebrar el año nuevo. Y me acuerdo que cuando estábamos en la iglesia, mi mamá le llama, I don't know to whom, pero yo me acuerdo que ella le llamó a alguien y they told us, we have to go to your house, like, tenemos que irnos para la casa, like, yeah. Y todavía se acababa el servicio, o sea, todo estaba, like, the service going on, and it was like New Year's, and people were in the altar, but they were like, we gotta go. So we left, we went to the house, and all I remember was the ambulance was there. They were taking my dad out of the house and I guess taking him back to the hospital. But at that point, it was kind of useless because the hospital themselves had already said my dad needed to pretty much just die at home. So it was, it was just a tough time. But they took him back to the hospital, and I remember, y por eso, like, for a long time they say like, I'm so like traumatized with the holidays because like that's what comes to mind. Pero me acuerdo de todo eso, y luego ya me acuerdo que pues eso fue en enero primero, January 1st, and 5 days later, which was January 5th, my dad passed away. Y it was a long process. It was a long healing process as well. And I remember the funeral. I remember the cemetery part of it. I remember everything, and it was just really hard. I remember it como que ahí, o sea, sí era un proceso, pero como que después falleció y empezamos como que otro proceso, porque ya después mi mamá no quería estar en la casa, no quería dormir en la casa, decía me quiero ir a Monterrey, ¿qué hago con mis hijos? And it was just like, and you're young, but you know everything that's going on, and it's like, okay, what's going on, and being that you're born and raised at church is just hard for you to understand that. And I remember even to the point that my mom was like, I don't want to go to that church anymore. There were pastors at that church, so it was kind of like, what's going to happen? Pero me acuerdo que llegó al punto que dijo, ya no quiero ir a, pues no que renegaba de Dios, sino ya no quería ir a esa iglesia, porque esa iglesia le traía muchos recuerdos de mi papá. Pero, o sea, para mí fue de que, like, a shock, like, what do you mean you don't want to go? To me, it was like, you want to stop going to church altogether. But it wasn't that way. It was just that she didn't want to go to that church. And it was like that was a whole start of another process, just kind of dealing with, the separation of my dad and, living life that way. And just seeing my mom cry all the time, seeing my mom, and then her trying to hold herself back for us. But it was just really like a really hard time. Y luego me acuerdo que ya después, years later, she got with my stepdad. And I'm just kind of like going really fast because it's really quick. But she got with my stepdad, and that was a whole other process because then jealousy comes in with like, it's another man in the house. And he had his kids, and then it was us. And that was another process just in itself, adapting. They were older, so they were more in their teens. I was like 10, 11, not in their teens yet, but they were older. And I remember it just being a lot of fights and a lot of calling the cops, and then even like CPS wanted to intervene. And it was just like traumatizing, I guess you can say, in a way. But we kept on going to church. We ended up going to the other church we were at after that, Cristo Viene. Y ahí nos quedamos, pero ya empezamos a asistir en esa iglesia. And pues I was 10 pretty much when I started going there. Y luego me acuerdo pues de que todo eso también fue un proceso like, difícil. Ya después pues ellos se casaron, empezamos a vivir así, and then, ¿qué pasó? Después de eso, o sea, fue un proceso y fue así bien difícil. Y luego después, años después, pasó el accidente de mi hermano, que he's here, and I just want to say, like, David, thank you for the opportunity. Like, quiero tomar el tiempo para decirle gracias a David and Carlos for the opportunity. I don't know whose idea it was, pero gracias y a veces no queremos dar el testimonio, no queremos que, pero como que ese empujoncito, that you have to say. Porque especialmente con el testimonio de mi hermano cuando my mom passed, I was like, she was the one that would say his testimony, now who's going to say it? Who's going to know about what God did in him? And I had it in mind, like, just recently, or like just before you had, sent that text to the group. And then even Esmeralda, when she gave her testimony, como que a mí it clicked to me, like, you gotta speak out, you gotta say something, you gotta move. And then you texted us, and it's like, oh, okay. And so en el 2012 me acuerdo que mi hermano tuvo un accidente. He's my older brother. He's 4 years older than me. I'm 29, so he's 33. So, cuando pasó el accidente de mi hermano, me acuerdo que fue un domingo y fue un día de las madres. Pues en la iglesia siempre hacíamos también el desayuno del Día de las Madres en la iglesia, y me acuerdo que estábamos preparándonos para irnos para la iglesia y todo, just like a regular Sunday. Él tocaba en el grupo de la alabanza, nosotros éramos panderistas, íbamos a ayudar con el breakfast de la iglesia y todo, y pues nos íbamos a ir temprano. Y esa mañana me acuerdo que él dijo, pues es que tengo que ir al trabajo rápido para arreglar unos papeles en el trabajo, and he worked at the airport at the time. And he said, I'm going to have to head to the airport. I'm going to drop y'all off first because y'all have to help serve at church. And then I'm going to go to the airport, and then I'm going to come back and make it before the service actually starts because he had to play. And so that was the plan. We left. We went to church. He dropped us off at church. I remember that. He dropped us off at church. And, we did what we do. We started helping out with the breakfast and everything with hermanas and whatnot. And then I remember service starting, and I remember not seeing him. And I was like, well, my brother's always playing the guitar. So it was weird. And I was like, well, maybe you know, he got backed up at work or whatever he was doing, maybe he got backed up. And I remember, and then the service had started and we were panderistas, so we were going to minister. And I remember, you know, we got ready and we were, and the service was just going on. And I remember, like, mid-praise and worship, somebody comes and tells me, hey, your mom's in the back. And I was like, okay. And my mom had worked that day, sorry I missed that part. My mom had actually worked that day, so she wasn't gonna be there for the Mother's Day breakfast, which sucked, but we were like, okay, after work we'll take you to like eat or something. And my mom had worked, so it was just like us, me, my brother, my sister that was supposed to be at church. My mom was gonna be working. And so cuando viene y me dice the girl, like, hey, your mom's in the back, I was kind of like, my mom's supposed to be working. But she was like, no, hurry up, your mom's in the back, pero como like, you know, and I was like, what's going on? And she's like, just go with your mom. Your mom's calling you. And I was like, okay. And so I like go to the back, and I remember they had like the sound room, so I go in there, and my mom was just crying. And I was like, what happened? And she could barely talk. And she's like, no sé, Israel tuvo un accidente. And I was like, you know, y me acuerdo que me dijo, vamos al hospital. So I went real quick back to the room, I grabbed my clothes, and then we left. And as we were going to the hospital, I remember like my phone was getting blown up because apparently this accident was in the news. And in the news they were saying that a person died in the accident. And so all the youth and like people had already seen the news about it, and we hadn't seen it, or I hadn't seen it, I didn't even know because we were in the, you know, church. And even like some of our youth, I remember they were texting us like, I'm so sorry for your loss. And I had no idea, like we were barely heading to the hospital, so we were like, what is going on? And I remember, you know, just text me saying, I'm sorry for your loss, God's with y'all, you know, like keep going forward. And I was like, well, you know, we hadn't even made it to the hospital, so I had no idea. And then, you know, we get to the hospital, we arrive at the hospital, and nos meten, and they told us, well, nos dijeron, he's in surgery right now. So we're like, okay, so what happened? And they told us he was in an accident, and he pretty much had no vital signs at the scene of the accident. At the scene of the accident, they pretty much, you know, they covered him up with the cobija because he was dead. He had no vital signs, he had no type of activity, nothing, and like his pupils were like dilated and no movement. And so lo único para lo que lo estaban llevando al hospital era para declararlo muerto by a doctor from the hospital, but technically he was already dead on the way to the hospital. So they said that when he got to the hospital, they injected him some kind of adrenaline, and that's what made him kind of come back, and then they rushed him to the hospital. So, to the surgery. And so when we got there, he was in surgery. It took hours, and they told us, after he got out of surgery, they told us, okay, pues el golpe fue más que nada en la cabeza, en el cerebro, in the brain. Nos dijeron, tuvo derrame cerebral, y no sabemos qué tanto vaya a afectar his way of living. And at that time, he was, I think, like 24 or 23. He was 23 or 24 because I was about 18. So he was, you know, very well in his like prime stage of just, you know, just like any one of us. And I remember they told us, we don't know, you know, the effects right now. We're just gonna wait and see how he recovers from the surgery and see how everything goes. And it was just, I remember that day, it was just so crazy because it was Mother's Day. It was Sunday, it was Mother's Day, and we were like stuck at the hospital. I bought my mom some chocolate strawberry, wait, dipped strawberry, or whatever, chocolate covered strawberries. I had bought my mom some chocolate covered strawberries, and we had just left them there, and we se las di. Y ya cuando estábamos esperando que saliera mi hermano fue cuando I was like, well, Mom, happy Mother's Day, but we're at the hospital, and you know, it wasn't what it was supposed to be. But so that was that. Pasaron los días, and he started kind of waking up, and then he started recovering, but then it got to a point where he wasn't really recovering. He was just there, and it wasn't getting better, but it wasn't really getting worse. And that was more of the time in our lives where it was more like, okay, like, is this gonna get better? Like, okay, it's not getting worse, but it's not really getting better, so when is it gonna get better? And it was just like a very frustrating time to see and to know, you know, that it's my brother and he's at the hospital, and it was just very traumatizing for all of us. And I remember that time went by, he finally started kind of opening his eyes and kind of reacting. And I remember that, and I remember that, the time? Pictures? Oh, yes, sorry, I forgot. Yes, I have pictures. And hold on, I remember that he started kind of reacting, and I remember that he didn't really recognize us. That's the car that he was driving. And you can go to the next one. So that was the car he was driving. So the other car pretty much like T-boned him in an intersection, and it was all messed up. And that's him at the hospital. That's me and my mom. We had to like shave him and everything. And then I remember just, you know, all of this happening, and I was, like I said, I was about 18, 19, he was about 23 or 24. And y me acuerdo, you know, that it was a very hard process, and then he started kind of waking up, but then that's when we realized, like, he doesn't recognize us. He's not the same person that he was, and that's how when we started kind of, you know, kind of reality was sinking in that, like, what's gonna happen after this. He wasn't really recognizing us. He was just like a kid, like, he could, you know, I don't know, he couldn't feed himself, he couldn't shave himself, he couldn't get up and go to the restroom. Just the most minimal things that you would think, you know, even a baby sometimes does, like que levanta la mano, or when he wants something, like, he couldn't do it. And it was just very, you know, crazy for us as his family. You know, we had already had the loss of my dad, and, you know, we were going through, like, you know, just a time crazy, and then we have him, this accident that was, you know, just a major life change for him and for us. And time went on, and then he started having seizures at the hospital, and then he just started kind of getting worse instead of getting better. And I remember somebody told us it's gonna get worse before it gets better. And so we were like, okay, like, what does that mean? And he surely did. He started, like, having really bad fevers. He started having seizures. He started desesperándose él mismo, and, like, the tubes that he had in his mouth and in his nose, we tried to yank them out. And at one point he did, and he started bleeding. And it was just really bad all around. He was in the hospital for 3 months. And I remember it was May when the accident happened, because it was Mother's Day, and he didn't get out till August. And I remember around August they told us, okay, well, we're getting ready to discharge him. And that in itself was so confusing to me, because to me I was like, he can't even get out of bed, how are you gonna send him home? And that's when I realized, yes, but they sent him home, and that's when we realized the process had kind of just begun at home, because then it was like, we had to take care of him completely. At the hospital, you're like, okay, you know, those nurses, everybody else is taking care of him, but at home it's like, you gotta take care of him. We had to shower him, we had to take him to the restroom, we had to do everything for him. Shave him, feed him, teach him how to feed himself, and then he started going through like a recovery period with therapy and all of that. And thank God that God was with us through that entire time, and he was the one that was giving us the strength to just continue to go forward. And so that was then, and then just like fast forward, he's here, thank God. And I don't want to go, I'm trying to go really fast. And after that, a few years después happened, and Isai and I got married in 2018, which is like 3 years ago. And I want to pause here and say, just choose wisely when you're choosing your significant other, because it's long term. You have no going back. And I just want to thank God for him, because he's like been there through thick and thin, and just through, especially these couple years, and I'm going there, but it's been really hard. But I thank God that, I have him, because it's just been very crazy. But I do want to say that, just choose wisely and wait on God, and don't go based on hormones and emotions, because, that's when you fail. But, wait on the Lord, and the Lord will provide. And just pray to God and just tell him, hey, this is what I want, or what do I need, or, just talk to God. And, just like if he was any other person, I think lately I've gone to that point where it's like, okay, I'm just talking to God just as if he was somebody next to me. And at first it was just real weird, but you grow into like a relationship with God where hey, he's a friend, and I can just speak to him. And I encourage you guys to just do that. Just speak to God as if he was, just there, because he is. And so we got married in 2018, and then we had our first baby in 2020, which was last year, which is that little girl somewhere. And she wasn't planned. Let me tell you guys, she was not planned. But God knows what he does. And we had her just in the middle of pandemic. And it was just like very traumatic, even that, to have her in the middle of pandemic where he couldn't go in to see, the ultrasounds and, the doctor visits and all of that. He wasn't allowed in. And me not wanting to be pregnant made that a little more traumatizing, just because I was like, I'm not ready for this. Like, I was honestly waiting like 2 or 3 years. I did not want a baby yet. So to me, it was, how can I say it? I felt guilty, but at the same time, I would say like, I don't want a baby. Like, I don't want a baby right now, and I wasn't happy during my pregnancy, and I can say that now. But at the same time, I felt guilty, and then at the same time, you want to feel happy, and you feel guilty for being, so it was just a big mess. Pero les digo, like, God has everything in control, and everything is just part of his plans. And we had her last year, 2020, in June, and when I was going to have her, I ended up testing positive for COVID, so that itself was kind of crazy. And but I wasn't having any type of symptoms. And then when we had her, they were telling us, no, you're going to have to keep her at the hospital for so many weeks. Do you want to either take her home or keep her at the hospital? But they were really pushing towards like, no, she needs to stay at the hospital, and she can't go home with you, and just, so that whole experience was just crazy. But gracias a Dios que we ended up, having a fine, delivery, and we had her, she was healthy, and we were able to go home. When we got home, it was just really hard kind of adapting to like being a first-time parent, and, the sleepless nights and everything that comes with it is hard. But then, and then months passed, and we got COVID in the house again. And it was around October, and this time it had hit my mom harder. And I remember just her getting sick. I remember it was like a Sunday, and I had told her, "Why don't you go to church?" You know, I kind of got on her. She didn't come to church that Sunday morning, and she's saying, "Oh, me siento bien, me siento rara," she told me. But she wasn't like, oh, feeling too sick. She was just feeling weird. And I was like, oh, okay, but we don't think anything of it. And then it just got to her. COVID is just so crazy. So it was like from one day to the next, she was just in terrible shape. Long story short, we did have to end up taking her to the hospital. I didn't want to. I cried when I took her, but she pretty much begged me to take her. And to me, it was like, she's a strong Mexican lady that will take any type of antibiotics at home and like self-medicate at home before ever going to a clinic or a hospital. So the fact that she was asking me and like literally begging me to take her to the hospital was like, okay, this is not good. And she was bad. Like she couldn't even walk from here to like the door without gasping for air. Her color was getting pale. It was just, and then her cough wouldn't let her just even breathe. So it was just really crazy, but we took her to the hospital, and then just at the hospital was a roller coaster of emotions where, one day they would tell us she's fine, other days they would tell us she's not doing too good. They ended up intubating her after 2 weeks of being in the hospital, and then after that, after the 2 weeks, they intubated her, and I still remember just like the whole process. It just happened in October of last year. And I remember just her calling me a couple of times and just kind of despidiéndose. And for your mom to kind of just call you out of nowhere and tell you that, just tell you like, Eunice, te quiero mucho, and take care of Israel, take care of the house, do this, do that. And I would just be like, no, Mama, no, like you're gonna be okay, like no. And it was just really hard to have to go through that. And my brother's disabled, so technically I'm the second, and to him, and I'm the oldest, you can say. And we had already lost my dad, so to me it was like, no, this can't be happening. Like, it's a lot going on. I just had my baby. She just like met her for 4 months, y luego pasó todo esto, porque she was just born in June, and then in October she was in the hospital. So things started getting really bad, and they got to the point that they were saying her organs are failing, her kidneys are not working because of COVID. She wasn't a diabetic, she didn't have any like high blood pressure issues, so it was just, it just hit us out of nowhere. Her organs started failing. They told us her kidneys started failing. They had to do dialysis at the hospital, and they told us, well, it's just temporary while COVID goes away and her kidneys kick back in, because technically she doesn't have any like kidney issues. It's just COVID on her kidneys right now. So we're very hopeful, and we're like, okay. And at the time, it's just very crazy, and your faith gets tested in so many ways, because so many things are happening, and you want to trust God, and you do trust God, but at the same time you're human, you're flesh and bone, and you're seeing what's happening, and your human eyes are seeing what's happening, your ears are hearing what the doctors are saying, and there's just a battle of like, where do I stand? Where is my faith? And time went on, and it was just a roller coaster, like I said, of emotions. It was just, we were just everywhere. And then pasó más tiempo, and then they said, okay, more of her kidney or more of her organs were starting to fail. Until I remember one day they called us and they told us it was a Saturday, and we were gonna have Friendsgiving that Saturday, and they told us to get ready, that she was gonna have, her heart was gonna stop that day. And y yo digo que ya para entonces pues Dios nos estaba preparando, and it was still really hard, but it was just you were more accepting, I guess, of it, if you can even say it, because there's no way you can really accept that, but it's just, you get to a mentality where it's like, okay, God, if it's your will, just let it, be and help us through it. But at the same time, you're in denial, and it was just a crazy time. But yeah, they told us that Saturday, y'all get ready because her heart might stop today. And we went to even go see her. They allowed us to go in, and they allowed us to go in and see her through a window because they weren't allowing anybody in the room. So, so that was that. And then that day, I remember we spoke to the family, we let them know everything that was going on. And thankfully, my entire family from my mom's side in Monterrey is Christian. So they were all, just giving us word and, diciendo, hey, pues Dios está con nosotros. Y si es el tiempo de Dios, then okay, lo aceptamos, pero, we gotta keep pushing forward and, we gotta keep going. And, y yo digo que eso fue lo que, brought comfort and peace to our hearts. And then I had to get into a mentality where I was like, okay, accepting of God's will and just praying and telling God, okay, because to that point I was like, no, God, like you can't, like there's no way. Like to me it was like, if it's been a whole month and a half and she's still at the hospital, you're gonna do something. There's no way it's been a month and you're just gonna, let her die. That was my thought, that was my thinking at the time. And to me, and like that's what I'm saying, it was just so hard to come to that point. Pero es como que Dios tu mía, and you just gotta, submit to His will and accept it. And no matter how hard it is, and no matter how bad you want other things to happen, if it's His will, it's gonna happen. And surely, enough, the next day, she passed. And that was December of this 2020. And it's been a process. It's been hard. I can say, the last year and probably a little bit of this year has been, I'm a big time crybaby, so it's been like the year that I've cried the most. But we can trust God through anything, and that's where I want to get through with this, because I'm sharing my testimony, but it's not about me, it's about God, and it's about how God's helped us and carried us through the entire time. And in Mark, I wanted to go to Mark 5:36. They talk about the story of Jairus, and I read it in English. It's Jairus, and he was in the crowd, and he was wanting to ask God. His daughter was sick, and he was wanting to ask God for God to heal his daughter. And while he was out there in the crowd trying to get Jesus' attention, llegan people and tell him, don't even go, as Jesus anymore. Your daughter's dead. And then Jesus hears this, and he turns around and tells him, do not be afraid, just believe. And I was reading it, and I was like, how can Jesus just tell him, like, do not be afraid, just believe? Like, it's easier said than done, literally. It's easier said than done. Don't be afraid, just believe. And I was like trying to think of that, and se me vino, where's Lucas? He's not here. Oh, Lucas. Se me vino a la mente, how you always say, sin miedo. And literally that's like what Jesus was telling this guy, sin miedo, bro. Like, he said, don't be afraid, just believe. And that's why I was like, how can Jesus just tell him that? Like, they literally just told him his daughter died. He was in desperation trying to, go to Jesus for his healing and his healing for his daughter. And he gets the news that his daughter died, and all Jesus says, don't be afraid, just believe. And I don't, and me recuerdo mucho de Lucas, because, it's easier said than done. Like, you can say that, but at the same time, it's like, when you're going through it, you can't just say, sin miedo, bro. And I know you, like, always say to, encourage them, which is cool. I don't mean it in a bad way. But, I was thinking, like, how can Jesus just say that? But that's literally what he was saying, like, don't be afraid, just believe. And I can only imagine the father's, like, frustration and desperation. But it was a process of trusting the unseen, trusting, more than, even death itself. Jesus was still telling him, do not be afraid, just believe. And it was, it was just trusting and taking his faith to another level. And in my life, I just feel like, I can kind of relate to that because, yes, it's been tough. Yes, it's been difficult. Yes, it's been stressful, but God has been faithful. God has been, so good, and he's just always shown up when we need him. And I feel like for me in my life, just recently, like, I know that God's going to do something. I know, I just know that God's going to do something. I know when I have faith and I trust him, and I know that it's been rough and it's been tough, and it, like, me and Isai talk all the time, and it's like, man, like, sometimes los dos podemos llorar because it's just been really tough. But I know that God is molding us. I know that God is, working with him in this way, and he'll get his testimony because he's been part of this process with me. But at the same time, God has been molding me, and I can't assure you and I can't say, hey, I know exactly and pinpoint exactly what God's going to do, but I know he's going to do something. And I know that he's showing us a different level of faith, a different level of just, and the biggest thing for me lately has been that verse that says that he is the God that brings peace that surpasses all understanding. And it's not till you go through something that you can't say God is your healer if he hasn't healed you. You haven't really been sick. You can't say, hey, God is, my provider if you've never had, need of anything and God hasn't literally provided. You can't really say that because it hasn't happened to you in your life. But in my life lately, I can just say man, God has been faithful. Man, God has been my peace. God has been there. He has been pulling through for us. And, I just want to encourage you guys, whatever it is that you're going through, whatever situation it is that you're going through, submit it to God. Give it to God. And I'm not saying this, I'm saying it because I'm still going through it. And if anything, I ask for your prayers for us because we're still going through it. It's a process, but we're all going through processes. And we're all different, walks in life. And God takes us through different things and trials and tribulations. But God's with us. And things are just getting bad out there. Things have just been getting worse day by day. We see the news where it's just thing after thing and after thing. When you think it can't get any worse, something else happens. And something else happens on one side of the world, on the other side of the world. And it's just getting bad. And it's just announcing the coming of God, the coming of Christ. He's coming for his church. And it's a time for us to really, open our eyes and really open, our minds and just allow God to, take control of our minds. Really hold on to God, hold on to his promises, and regardless of what's going on in your life, regardless of how it may seem, trust God. Put your trust in God. Don't put your trust in men because, men can fail you. The pastor may fail you. We may fail you. Anybody in here can fail you, but God is always there. And with that, I just want to ask Carlos to help us with a song and just, reflect on God's goodness and God's faithfulness, and y'all can stand up. And just reflect on, how good God has been. You may be going through something, you may be going through a struggle right now, I don't know. Maybe you just found out of something yesterday, or it just happened today, or something's just kind of happening right now. But the Lord knows, and the Lord is with you, and he strengthens you, and he gives you what you need to go forward. And it's so true how it says that he will not give you more than you can handle, because it's not you handling, but it's him walking with you every step of the way. And just continue going forward. And I just want to encourage y'all to do not give up. Do not give up the race. It's a long race, but God is